the American legal system is definitely one of them for a European like myself. It's like
for the Americans, not just for the Europeans, for everybody. And this is actually something we're working now with a couple non-US law firms to help them, bring businesses into the US despite the volatility that's happening right now inside the US and the business world. And I've worked in a couple different countries' legal systems at this point, and it's very funny because they ask this question that seems so logical, so simple, of, well, why can't we just do this? So many times I have to give them an answer of, that's just the US system. I'm so sorry.
The worst thing that can happen to a business is you build something great and then all of a sudden somebody else comes and trademarks it and you can't do anything because you didn't get your trademark, and they just come in and nearly steal all of your hard work, which is why I've got Samantha on here. I was trying to find somebody that could talk about trademarking in a fun, interesting way, because I find it notoriously boring, all that legal stuff myself, so I didn't want to go for a nap. That wouldn't make for very good content. But let's just get into it, Samantha. I know we spoke about last time that it took you 6 years as a trademark lawyer to get your own trademark. How come? You didn't even have to pay lawyer fees.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
Very ironic, yes.
Well, I mean, for sure, preaching to everybody, helping other people build and protect brands while completely neglecting my own for 6 years. And to be quite clear, we still don't have it yet. We've only applied, but the process takes over a year for most people. So we're still waiting for our application to move through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO. And I don't have a great answer for this other than there was a complete disconnect in my confidence in my business skills, which made no sense because I knew I had the legal skills to do it. I didn't trust myself, is the simplest answer. I didn't trust myself to build this into something that was worth going through a year-long process to even try to get a trademark for. I didn't believe that I could make this last long enough that I felt was needed to justify the application.
And was it just that now I've been doing it for 6 years? But this seems like it's gonna last. At least I have some data to back it up, or was there something completely different that came in and changed it?
Yeah, I mean, so 6 years in, there definitely is some data to back up that, the firm isn't going anywhere anytime soon, at least not if I don't want it to. But for me, there was a moment last summer where I finally got a hold of our fifth property. My brother and I have a small real estate company, and I was expecting to be able to essentially come in and clean out this house and turn it into a long-term rental. So standard rental house that most people would come in and furnish themselves and stay there for a couple years. And that's what I thought I was walking into. And the reality is I walked into this house and within a couple hours quickly realized that what I thought was going to be a relatively easy cleanup job was going to be significantly more than that. And we wound up spending more than 6 times what I had remotely imagined would be our maximum. And all of a sudden, with an investment that big, the long-term rental it couldn't generate enough revenue to justify keeping this property as it was. And I am proud to say that apparently it took me 6 years of building a business, but I did not simply panic and say, oh, well, I guess we just won't do that. I sat down immediately and started looking at options for how we could get more revenue out of this single property. Because with all the other properties that we have, we're actively trying to keep affordable housing in our community. So if this property doesn't generate the revenue that I need it to, I can't keep those other properties affordable for our folks. Or at least not without, finding some new option. So looking around, going through it, I came across the strategy of midterm rentals, corporate furnished rentals, which is kind of this middle ground between Airbnb and long-term rentals. The idea is it is furnished, and we promote it to the university, the laboratory around the corner, for people who want a temporary place to stay for a couple months. And so I started working for this immediately. It took me about 5 months to get everything together and to get it actually launched and going. But while I was in the process of building it, my husband, as sweet as he was, this question, and it pissed me off at the time, I must admit. But he came to me and he's like, how do you know this is going to work? It was everything in me not to break down and say, I have no idea how this is going to work, but I trust that I can build this, and I trust that I can find the resources to make this work. And if I can't find them, I know who to ask to help me find them. And it was really I realized it a couple weeks later of like, I now believe that if the answer is not immediately in front of me, that I can find it. And I believe it in the context of building a business, not just in providing legal services. I had the opportunity by wonderful mentors to become a really good lawyer because they let me feel uncomfortable regularly. But never so much that I was completely outside of my comfort zone. This one was wildly outside of my comfort zone. So then all of a sudden you're looking at a trademark when, of course, yeah, I don't even have to pay the legal fees. It's just my time. I'm like, I trust that I can build this. If I can build that, I can build this. It's unfamiliar. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to make it necessarily worth it, but I know what the vision is in my head, and I know this is a foundational piece of that vision. So I'm going to bet on myself.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it all of a sudden, it kind of came from out of nowhere, at least from a place where you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, completely unrelated to the law firm. Wildly unrelated. Like, sitting there in overalls covered in dust and from ripping up carpets that were saturated with dog urine. We're fighting a flea infestation. And my husband's just like, how are you going to make this work? I don't know. I'm disgusting right now. There are 10 million tabs open on my computer to help me figure out how to make this work. But I will, some way or another.
Yeah, and nowadays there's a lot of good tools to make things work and push you a lot of the way to at least get it done, and you don't have to spend as much time on the front end doing all of the research and trying to get the ideas of where to even start.
Yeah.
That can be one hell of a challenge if you just sit there and go back and forth with yourself. Where do I start?
For sure. I mean, I don't think I would have readily found this strategy. I didn't have strong connections into people that worked in the real estate industry. I could have taken a couple of them out to dinner and like kind of done the pick your brain thing, right? But that would have taken weeks, not a couple of days. So we were able to get up and running that much faster. And I was able to make decisions on, the various things on the property with that goal in mind, rather than just trying to pick what I thought was generally best for a broad audience that would work for everybody. We got to design it with this idea being the end goal.
And it's a good point you make in saying that if you do the traditional way, reach out to the experts, reach out to the humans, it's going to take some time, even though it's probably going to be 1-2 hour conversation. You're going to find a person. You're going to find a time that works.
Yep.
You got to go, especially if it's like a dinner, you got to go to wherever the dinner is. And
there you go.
And all of a sudden, quite a lot of time is spent. Which is a lot of the time when I have a group chat with a team and work on some AI stuff. And when I send like a voice note or message in that group chat, often before I click send, I'm like, oh, this is an angle I haven't quite thought about yet. Let me go in and research it again. Because if I can find the answer now, it's going to be a lot quicker.
Right.
Because I don't have to wait for the other person to respond. And when they have time to research and then give me the answer, and then 2 days has passed easily.
Or even alternatively, right? We just learn better questions to ask.
Exactly.
Which helps us move faster as business owners. And I don't know, every day that house wasn't ready, that wasn't on the market, and like waiting for somebody to come and enjoy it, was a day that we were, not making up for the investment that had to go in that house to get it there. So moving fast became important. And now, like, that's in real estate, right? But when you start talking about online businesses, the stakes, fortunately, because of all the technology, are not quite so high, right? I mean, the cost that you pay to rent your domain name is much lower than the
Yeah.
cost for renting a house, thank God. But every day that it's sitting there is a day that you're not earning revenue that could be used to build the next iteration of your business, right? And every moment that you don't have more data, more information, by starting a process, right? By making a test, by putting out marketing material, by seeing what the response is from the people in your audience, that's just data that you don't have to be able to move even faster, right? So that speed is helpful, but only if it comes from an informed place.
Very true as well. And in that kind of conversation, I imagine that house was a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, we
Yeah.
gotta do something. We gotta change something. This is
Yeah.
gonna be a lot more work than we expected. Uh,
Which
to-
sucks when it happens, right? I mean, those kind of wake up call moments are overwhelming, and you lose like the brain capacity to think about anything else, right? Suddenly everything is focused on that one crisis that's slammed in front of you.
and that's why I like people that do what you do, because you take the wake-up calls that the rest of us are gonna be like, nah, this is not worth it. I don't want to be dealing with any of this. And that also makes me want to ask you, do you have like a good example, or maybe two examples of like a legal wake-up call?
Absolutely. I think a lot of business owners come to us when they already have a problem. And then, of course, resolving the problem takes a lot more time and emotional energy and, frankly, money than if they would have come to us in a proactive state.
Hmm.
And maybe going back to even like the house, right? If you've got a small leak in the roof, if you take care of it as soon as you find it, no problem. If you let it sit for years, now you're starting to talk about structural damage and like redoing trusses and having roof patches come in if you can patch your roof, and praying that it doesn't go below the attic, right? When it comes to legal stuff, I had a friend who has an amazing brand that has like just a very quirky style, very fashion forward, and visually, right? Super important. So she does a ton of photo shoots, And she, early in her business, she was working with a friend slash contractor that found her way into a lot of those photo shoots. A couple years later, she tells the friend, like, oh, we're going in a different direction. I don't need you to work with me anymore. The friend slash contractor takes it personally. And in the emotional state that the friend slash contractor is in, goes through and hires a lawyer, starts going on Meta and demanding copyright takedowns of all of these images that my friend had used to help build her brand over the years. Images that she feels are a crucial part of her brand. And all of a sudden, she's doing this tour of art venues and authors, and this plops up in her email inbox of, you have to find these hundreds of pictures over the past years, and we're demanding you take them down or we're suing you immediately. That kind of email is the kind of email that triggers in our little lizard brains the fact that we think we're being chased by lions, even though we're just sitting at a computer reading some
Yeah.
words on a screen. That doesn't negate the emotional impact of it and how heavy that can feel. What's crazy is if she would have had a photo release, or if she knew the terms to look for in the photographer's contract when she was booking all these photo shoots, she could have been in a position to write back and say, nope, you gave me the authority to use these photos. Sorry, you're mad. Bye. But she didn't. And now weeks and weeks have gone on, and this has taken up her entire brain, right? She doesn't have the ability to think about this magnificent tour that she's built that's going to build a different part of her brand. She doesn't have the peace of mind to sit down and think about how she can leverage that into something bigger. These things that make us feel like the lion is chasing us stop our brains from being able to think of the next step, the next big thing, or the next option. Maybe just to make our lives easier, even if you're not trying to get bigger, just to make your life easier, because that's all that's consuming your every single thought at that moment. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, it could be worse. It could be real lie, right?
Could be the lion. It could be the lion. You know, I think I actually want to add like a meme of a lion at the bottom of my cease and desist letters with a little joke of like, this is not an actual lion.
He's gonna end it on a positive note. I don't know if I'll find it funny though in a cease and desist letter. Or at least it's not a lion. Wink, and then be like,
but is it?
Yeah, you're right. It could be a little bit worse, but it's funny you brought that up because I've often talked about on the podcast how our brains can't really differentiate between the modern day lions, where you lose money, you get sued or whatever, and it panics like it's life or death, which it really isn't, and just going to lead you to take much worse decisions because you don't have to just think about running and getting away as fast as possible. There are other rational solutions to this, which is hard to come up with when we're in that very emotional state.
Amazingly hard to come up with. But if you've looked at it before and you're like, no, this is something I want to do, and you get the proper, protections in place, then I call cease and desist letters. I call them nasty lawyer letters. Then it can be fun to get one. Because you're like, no, we've already taken care of this. You're so cute. Go your way.
See, good I'm not a lawyer because I wouldn't trust my own thoroughness enough to, have I forgotten something? That would be my first, absolutely the first thought that would come to my head if one of those came in. I'm like, oh no.
Fair. That's fair. That's totally reasonable. And I think that's a really good point to make of when we're in those situations, unless it's, the thing that you do day in and day out, it's hard not to second guess yourself. Which is why I tell everybody, right? Surrounding yourself with a team of people that have your back in any part of business, right? Even if that's just like your group WhatsApp chat where you guys are sharing, the drama, the wins, all of that. Even just having somebody that can help like re-regulate you and remind you that there's not a lion and ask what your first instinct is and then be like, okay, but have you considered these other things? Even if it's just that friend that's super critical, like critically analysis vibes, super helpful in business, necessary. I don't know a woman who doesn't like, when they start dating a guy, I don't know a woman who doesn't like plot their messages with their girlfriends. So what, like, why aren't we plotting our messages to our nasty lawyer letters with our business besties, right?
No, I didn't know it went that deep. I thought I was playing chess, but apparently not. It's complete other way around. I thought I was sneaky.
The women have been playing chess for centuries. The boys have been playing checkers. We know it. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough. I thought I was sneaky, but apparently not. You learned something new every day. I'm not plotting in messages in that way. Might should have been a feedback or coaching and how to respond to certain messages. But yeah, okay. I like that. Well, it's a good point you make, and I really like that transition into personal business life, because most of the times, if you're emotionally involved in something, somebody that isn't emotionally involved in that thing can give you a better idea and response.
Sure.
Like, I find it a lot easier to come up with good responses for my friends than I do for myself.
Always.
Because I generally don't care what she says back. I just think of something I find sounds good or funny or something like that, and then you do you. It's not my problem if this completely goes left. That's your problem. You can have the call back.
Well, I think that's why it's so much easier, especially when we start talking about, marketing for businesses, or even if we take this to like an employee context. People have such a hard time writing their own CVs, writing their own resumes, because hyping yourself up can be really difficult because you are emotionally attached to the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And removing that and taking it from the friend who's just, interested by your potential relationship, or the friend who just wants to see you get a promotion, but like you getting that promotion is not going to change their lives. It removes such a large emotional component out of it. And that's why people have such a big deal with looking at maybe the revenue numbers in their business. Having that CPA, that bookkeeper who's, skilled at putting together a P&L sheet for you, and having conversations with that person can make that task feel so much easier, so much more accessible, because somebody who has the capability to analyze it without the emotional attachment is there with you.
And I guess it would be the same with trademarks.
Always.
Maybe that's we just found another reason why it didn't take, or why it took you 6 years compared to what you've been saying to your clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's in the same way that, like, it's so easy to hype up our friends, right?
Yeah.
I can look at somebody's business and very quickly be like, this could be big. Don't worry about this one. This one here, this could be everything. And not only, like, what are we doing on the trademark side of, like, how you can expand this, how you can create this into a licensing deal, how we can franchise this, how we can make this something that you have other people sell for you, right? These ideas come out of my head super quick on anybody else's company, but not my own.
Yeah. We do like our heads in the weeds. We don't really, we forget to peek up above the weeds and really take that overall picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you had to like break down what a trademark like really means for like a service-based business or like business that sells products, I guess the difference doesn't really matter too much when it comes to the trademark.
Not terribly much. I think the simplest way, to explain what a trademark is, because there's a lot of confusion, even among lawyers who are not intellectual property lawyers, about what it is and what it does. And the reality is, intellectual property is this bundle of rights. So imagine I gave you literally, like, we're going to make a fire, and I come back with a stack of firewood, right? Like, laid across my arms, walking to the fire. Ready? Each one of those sticks is a different right that we have in things that we own or create. In the way that intellectual property has 3 different core things: trademark, copyright, and patents. Patents protect processes and scientific inventions, stuff that people with like PhDs have, or that crazily handily dude that spends way too much time in his garage, right? Those people are awesome. There's normally designs and drawings of what it is that they've created that have to get submitted. You have scientists pore over these things and confirm that nobody's ever made anything like it before. Amazing. Super cool. Copyright protects content. Anything that another person can consume, can watch, can look at, can listen to, that you have created, the moment you create it and in a way that somebody else can engage with. So the second this podcast, for example, is downloadable to somebody, or streamable to somebody, or visible to somebody, right, on a video platform, it's content, and it's already protected. Doesn't mean it's easy to defend if someone steals it, but it is already technically protected. Trademark, what trademark does, the whole goal of trademark is to make sure that your customer does not confuse your service or product with a competitor's service or product. That's it. That's the whole reason it exists. Now, what you can do with that is another game entirely. What does that look like? It means that Dove soap and Dove chocolate can both exist, despite the fact that Dove and Dove are wildly different companies. Because no one's going to confuse soap and chocolate, right? They're not, at least I hope not, right? Otherwise, please go see your doctor. I can't help you there. If you're eating soap, I don't know, your parents are cruel, and I hope you get chocolate soon. In the same way that we want to make sure that if you've created something in the online world, a course, a program, a workbook, if you're known for your podcast, we want to make sure that somebody can't come in and create something that's in a very, like, talking about a similar thing, offering a similar service where the name is similar enough that your customers might think you're them. Because what happens? If somebody straight up copied all of your stuff, okay, they're stealing from you outright, and we've got a whole bunch of issues. But if they've only copied your brand, right, this thing that you're known by, this it can be a phrase, it can be the logo, it can be a smell, it can be the red on a Louis Vuitton shoe. Literally, it can be the smell of Play-Doh, which I find fascinating. But if that's what people associate with you, that's what somebody can steal and then go produce a lesser quality product. a lesser quality service, a dupe, a counterfeit. And if your customers think they bought it from you and not the counterfeit, suddenly it's your reputation that's on the line, right? Not theirs. You've also lost money. And now you're having to defend a product that you didn't create, a service that you didn't provide. That's that. And there's just no need for that. So when we start talking about trademark, the idea is we're creating this protection specifically for your customers so they're not confused. But we can also use that to, like any little stick in that bundle that I was carrying to the fireplace, we can give parts of it to other people with restrictions on how they use it and require that they pay you for it. There's a bunch of different forms this can take, depending on what your business is, what it sells. You see this in, well, let's say the most successful franchise in the world, McDonald's, right? McDonald's owns the land under, I think, every McDonald's in the world. But what they do is they sell the ability to use the McDonald's name and access McDonald's products to an individual or a company that then runs that store for them. And they get paid for that, even though they're not the ones actually doing anything other than owning the land. And then they collect rent for the land, which is like a double whammy. So clever. If you've got a coaching program that you offer, you can license that to universities per seat and charge an amount per student that watches your program, right? Or corporations, if you've got something that works really well in HR or wellness. This was a big deal for a while. So once we make sure that your brand is yours and only yours, then we can find ways to let it work for you without you having to do the work by handing over this one stick, but not the whole bundle.
One stick. I prefer
One
the
stick.
whole bundle. You get
No,
one
the
stick.
bundle stays with you. We're not throwing away the whole bundle. That one's yours.
Well, then it'd be very, very cold night. If you don't have that whole bundle to light the fire, you don't have any wood left. And an example is on this podcast, going back to that, on YouTube you can kind of click, I can't remember the two names of them, but basically one of them is, okay, you and you only you can use the content. Of course, there's fair use, whatever that means in different places of the world. That's a very interesting law where you don't get any definitive answers. What's fair use? What's not? And then it's like one person.
Welcome to law.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah.
It always depends.
It depends. Yeah, it is one of those. You just take the risk. I think this is fair use, and I'll take the ramifications if it's not.
There you go. But it's knowing your comfort on your risk level, right? Because if some business owners are very low risk, some are perfectly fine with accepting more risk. But if you don't know what your risk level is, and then you don't have an understanding of what you're doing and where that falls in the risk level, then you're playing darts with a grenade.
Yeah.
Which you can do, but you'll blow up the board while you're at it.
Definitely. Oh, you get a bullshot, probably, with all those printers coming out. That's a guarantee. That's a lot better than my normal darts games. At least there's a lot less luck involved, I'll say. But back to the example, then there's the other button, which is basically people have creative freedom to use it how they want. I think they're still not allowed to copy it and just re-upload it. I think they're still a little bit against that. But I always just take the second option. Let people use it. It's free marketing. End of the day, that's the reason for the podcast. It's not the business plan is not to make a whole lot of money from it directly, ads and that kind of stuff. It's more, okay, let's build a brand around it. And then that allows marketing and people to go in and market it if they want to. And also then, if we have guests on, they upload a clip, they're not going to get flagged from it. But I don't think you're going to do that, because then if you find a clip yourself and put a little bit of editing on it and B-roll and captions, at that point, is it fair use or isn't it? Then you become into, it depends.
It depends on how nice on so many levels.
Yeah, niceness. I think the best description I got of it in the way was, if you're nice about the person and say good things about them, they probably won't sue you or take it down. But if you just sit there and flame them for 30 minutes, they probably are.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a higher risk, but it also, feelings change, right?
Yeah.
Remember my friend that I just told you the story about? just because everything was good and dandy then doesn't mean it stays that way. And that's why I stress so much. It depends on your comfort with risk as a business owner. And it depends on why you're doing the thing that you're doing, right? This example with the podcast, right? If I were to go take a clip now and go put it on my Instagram or my TikTok, 100% I'm promoting you guys as well as myself, right?
Yeah.
You're probably okay with that. But if I take this interview and put it in a paid course that I'm charging people for, and you find out, you're probably less okay with that because you should be getting your chunk of it too, right?
I'll give you a little bit of money, then that's not a problem.
But that's when we get into the level of like, okay, we're talking about this content here. This is protected by copyright, which has its own set of rules and protections and when things kick in and what we can do with it. The brand name, right? If I'm like, no, you guys gotta go check out this podcast. You don't understand. This is it. And when I tell you the name of this podcast, that's the brand. And that's something that maybe you change your mind. Maybe you do want to monetize down the road. But if somebody opens up a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever next platform becomes the new thing for us, right? In the same name as yours, and your customers, your listeners start going there, your subscribers, that can become an issue for you. Maybe not initially, but maybe they become such a good copyright counterfeit of you, right, that it becomes a problem. And if you want the ability to shut them down quickly, that's when trademark comes into play. But if they're copying your content, that's when copyright is what you're looking for.
I like that. And just to, since we're already on the topic of trademarks, what's the biggest myth you actually ever heard about trademarks? Or we can take like copyright, those different three subjects you were speaking about.
I mean, it's the simple confusion between the three is a big thing. But I don't think people really I don't think business owners in particular need to have like a firm grasp on that. For me, I get really upset though when I see other lawyers, especially other non-intellectual property lawyers that are like out here like, yeah, patent your brand name. That's not what we do. And lawyers should know better. I make absolutely no judgments on anybody else for this, but on lawyers, it really upsets me. The ones that I see with business owners, online business owners, the two that can be dangerous assumptions, frankly, is people thinking they're too small for a trademark, so they just do whatever. And then thinking that if they got the domain name and the social media handles, that they're all in the clear. And these work together for two reasons. Because too small for a trademark doesn't mean that the brand that you're creating isn't such a cool name that somebody else isn't using it. So even if you don't have plans to expand, right, or make it so a trademark's worth it, what you do want to make sure whenever you're launching a new product, program, service, business name is making sure that somebody else isn't already using it. Most people think a quick Google search, making sure the domain and the social media handles mean they're in the clear. But that's not necessarily a guarantee. If I searched, for example, Just Do It from Nike, I don't think justdoit.com exists. I'm not going to find Just Do It as a social media handle from Nike. And now I think it's fine, but it's far from fine, right? Nike is very protective of this phrase. So even if I'm doing, let's say I have a small t-shirt business, in one state, I'm making funny t-shirts and my brand is Just Do It. Nike could 100% send me one of those nasty lawyer letters and they would be within their rights because Just Do It is associated with clothing and sports apparel, right? Now we're using the same brand, same name, similar name, confusing name, selling similar things. It is understandable that a consumer would be confused, that a customer would be confused and potentially think you're related to Nike. Nike has every, not even just encouragement, but responsibility actually to shut that down and make sure that their brand stays protected. So those two things, they go together in a way that I think a lot of people, they haven't been exposed to thinking about, like, this could be a problem. And a really easy way to figure that out is to go talk to a lawyer and see if they can do what we normally call a comprehensive search. And they'll give you kind of a range of like how risky your brand name is. We can't make guarantees like doctors, right? Like Sorry. I wish we could. It'd make life a lot easier. But we can tell you, you're high risk, low risk, medium risk. And then you as the business owner can take that decision of what risk you're willing to accept to move forward with. We also have a trademark quiz that we offer so you don't have to go sit with a lawyer and pay whatever money that we charge, because I know we're expensive. I get it. I truly. That in like 10 minutes, it'll tell you if a trademark makes sense as a return on investment for your business. And then if it does, if your name is trademarkable enough. Because we can't trademark generic terms. It's got to be semi-unique in what it is that you're selling. And we have a process that walks you through that. That can be really helpful if you're not at that stage of talking to a lawyer yet. And one of the beautiful things about intellectual property is it is national law. So you don't have to talk to a trademark in your state. The rest of the world allows lawyers to be for their whole country, but the US requires them to be for one state unless it's national law. So on this, if you find somebody you like, you can go chat with them about it. They may not be able to answer other questions about your business, but they can definitely help you with this.
I find it very weird that we just can't find one lawyer. No, you can't do that.
It is utterly insane, and I say this from sitting in Brazil, where, also a massive country, their lawyers can go over the whole country. They have states too, and a federal system, the same as the US. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, and I'm sorry. I can tell you we're actively trying to change it, because it makes things hard on everybody.
Oh, I imagine that's gonna be one of the things that ain't gonna be changed very soon, because there's gonna be some people that doesn't want to change it because it means business for them, and that little majority is gonna make sure it's gonna be an absolute hell to pass it.
That you have described approximately 25 years of efforts within the American Bar Association in a very short sentence. Thank you for that. That's perfect.
It's there's things over here that's very similar. You can't go to the physio if you want the government grant before going seeing the doctor, and all the doctor says is you need to go to the physio, but you have to get your doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise, you're like, I knew that. I was trying to go around you and save us all this moment. Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to save us all money and make it easier for everybody, but no.
No, don't do that.
I have to show up for go in there 2 minutes. Yeah, duk. Yep, you need to go here, and be like, great. Thank you very much for the info. I already knew that.
Yeah, thank you. I was incapable of Googling that.
Yep. I can feel it if it's internal or just a muscle. I'm pretty aware of that. I don't need you to tell me that, but some things are just not meant to be understood, and the American legal system is definitely one of them. For a European like myself, it's like
for the Americans, not just for the Europeans, for everybody. And this is actually something we're working now with a couple non-US law firms to help them, bring businesses into the US despite the volatility that's happening right now inside the US and the business world. But and I've worked in a couple different countries' legal systems at this point, and it's very funny because they ask this question that seems so logical, so simple, of, well, why can't we just do this? And I can never give... so many times I have to give them an answer of, that's just the US system. I'm so sorry.
Just because don't ask so many questions. I can't answer anymore.
Yeah, I'll tell you how we can get it done, but the steps, you may not like the steps along the way. I'm terribly sorry about that.
I think it's most governments, not only the US,
yes.
but that you guys might have a lot of bureaucracy compared to smaller countries at least. But including myself, a lot of founders, when they see that legal talk, legal speech, they go, nope. Or at best nowadays, it's ChatGPT translate this into human for me. Mm-hmm. Because I ain't dealing with reading this there's words I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And that, if you give me in Danish, it's going to be the exact same thing. You learn a new word every time you get a legal document.
It's fair.
What is a good way to handle that and really get on top of some of those leaks before they flood your entire house, basically?
Yeah. Let me start off by saying that I completely understand that, the legal foundations, they can feel like the dusty corner of the attic that you're convinced is haunted by your great uncle, who you never liked anyway, and you just don't want to interact with. I get it. I get it. And so much of the people that work in legal are the great uncle that you didn't like and never wanted to interact with. We, as a profession, can be overwhelming. We can be expensive. We can be condescending. All of that is true. The easiest way to really get started on all of this stuff is simply to find a lawyer that understands what it is that you're trying to build. I've had folks come to me after they went to another lawyer who didn't know what Stripe was. I'm like, as an online business, if your lawyer doesn't understand your payment processor, there may be issues in how they can protect your payments. Just a few, right?
Yeah.
And having somebody that can support what it is that you want to do, right? Lawyers have a terrible reputation of just saying, no, can't do that, please don't do that, rather than trying to empower business owners to be able to make decisions on the risk tolerance level that they deem acceptable. It's not my job to make these decisions for you. It's my job to make sure that you have all the information in front of you to ask better questions, right? I think finding those supportive partners is super helpful. And then, if you can't find that, I will say ChatGPT is good at summarizing things. But if you don't know the right questions to ask the summary, you're not necessarily going to get all the information you need, right? And I'm really sorry. Yeah, we use terribly outdated language in everything. I actively write the templates that we put in our template shop in a way that we reduce that kind of legalese as much as possible. And then with our private clients and in our template shop, we send explainer videos with every contract because they need to come with instructions.
They do.
I have seen people try to, and bless her. She was doing what she thought would work, and it was a good start, but it was misconstrued. She was a coach, and all she had on her website was a really simple contact form. That's it. That was the only information she was collecting. And whether you're in the EU or the US or Brazil, right, you're subject to GDPR or the California Data Privacy Act, or Brazil's version that's much closer to the protections that Europeans have. You probably need to have a privacy policy on your website if you're asking for information from this, right? And she heard this. She heard this on a podcast and said, great, let me go find one. And she copied the one off of Twitter. Twitter is an entirely different platform that has people interacting with each other. There's all sorts of bizarre things on Twitter. They're collecting much more sensitive data and information. She needed a first name and an email. You didn't have to go that far. But that's why, again, you can hear this bit of information. Maybe ChatGPT tells you need a privacy policy. But if you don't have the support to ask the right questions, you're not going to come out with what you need.
Kind of what we spoke about earlier. Sometimes it's all about asking the right questions is the most important thing. You don't need to know all the information. You just need to know enough to know what to ask about.
Precisely. And if you don't, then the next best thing is to find a way to get information from reliable sources.
True.
ChatGPT. I have tried it. I have tried it every day. I'm waiting for the day it takes over my job, please. Because then I don't have to do so much work. It's nowhere close. It's terrible. It's like a first-year law student right now.
I would trust it to write that simple privacy policy. I would trust it to write that one. It could probably do one that if it's a first name, email.
I don't. The problem is ChatGPT is not smart enough to ask you if your customers are in Europe, California, or Brazil.
I would very much point out it needs to be GDPR compliant.
Yeah.
100%. If you don't, you're going to get me in a lot of trouble. I don't want to go to jail. That kind of thing I would write in there as well. But
to be super clear, no one's going to jail. over their simple contact sheet on their website because they don't have a privacy policy.
Oh,
Let me be very clear.
I wouldn't trust the EU not to throw you in jail for
That's
that one.
fair. The EU,
They
EU
seem
might.
pretty aggressive on that
They
kind
are
of
really
stuff.
aggressive about it. That's fair, guys. If you have clients in the EU, please go check on this.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, oh, yeah. Or never plan to visit Europe ever again in your life. I'm pretty sure
you don't have to visit.
Oh,
If
if
your
you,
data is going through a data server in Europe, it applies.
I think they will still sue you. I just thought there was
Yeah.
so much of a hassle. They were like, we don't want to deal with this one.
Maybe. But again, that's where's your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah, I have a thing if I have a thing if when I work with people, I'm like, if you do anything in Europe, it needs to be done correctly because I know whose ass they're gonna come for, and it's not you and you. It's gonna be me.
Yeah,
and I know how they treat that kind of stuff. So we need to chill.
Yeah.
No, we can do all of the funny stuff anywhere else in the world because if it's, at least I believe so, this is definitely not legal advice. I'm not the lawyer here, so I will point that out very
There's
clearly.
the disclaimer.
Yes. If it's like a small case, I imagine they'll be like, nah, we don't want to deal with this if it's outside the EU. I imagine that's what they're going to. If it's within the EU, oh, they're definitely going to get you. They love fines. Like,
They love fines. They really do.
They're going to lower the tax rate with all those fines at some point. It's going to be funded by them. They'd rather fine you into poverty than put you in jail because one of them costs money, another one means money
in their pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're very efficient in business. But I also had like a question written on here, which is how you're kind of different to the traditional lawyer. And at this point of the conversation, I don't even have to ask the question because I think the conversation we had today kind of showcased like lawyers don't have to bore you to death. To put it very directly, you can actually have a fun, interesting conversation.
I promise.
Some of you are. Let's not make false promises.
Some of us. It might be a small percentage, but we do exist. I think the biggest thing really is just making sure, like any other service provider, right? Whether they're creating AI bots for you, AI agents, marketing material, your CPA, your bookkeeper. If you don't find the support team that clicks with you, right? That doesn't make you feel small for not knowing something, which is stupid. How are you supposed to know everything? That blows my mind. You've got to find those people that line up with the way that you want to do business, values that are important to you, and frankly, connect with you on a personal level in a way that allows you to ask the better questions, right? If you're super virtual, tech savvy, as business owners in the online space really do have to be, shouldn't all of your support staff be that way too? Like, as a lawyer, I've had to hire lawyers, which I know sounds crazy. I can't do all my own legal work, though, because it's such a big field. It's like hiring a pediatrician to do a heart surgery. Bad idea. Yeah. I'm going to stick to my heart surgery, right? Or my pediatrics. I'm going to hire the other guy to do the other thing. And most recent law firm I worked with, they wouldn't accept payment by anything other than check, like a mailed check or dropped off at their office. Or I could use credit card, but I had to pay like an 8% convenience fee or something. And I'm like, but this feels like your convenience to get their credit card because the money just arrives in your account. You don't have to take a physical check to the bank once a week with your stack of other physical checks. Why am I paying for this convenience? Your convenience. Interesting. And it's hard sometimes to know if the partners that you're hoping to work with, or even just get information from, right? Match with that on if you're not working from a referral or being able to watch content from them. But I think it's important when you're looking for that support to really ask yourself, why have I avoided support in this area until now? And go talk to your therapist about that. Here's my disclaimer. I'm not a therapist. I play one on TV sometimes. This TV that you're watching right here. But then, really making sure that you're asking what kind of support it is and what's the best way for you. Do you want it to be in person? Are you okay with it being on video? Do you like somebody who shows up on a Vox channel, immediately? Do you like having a weekly set date with someone to go over stuff? Figuring out what works in your business's workflow, your personal structure. Because at the end of the day, if you're the one running the business, it's got to suit you, or it's got to be handed off to somebody else, or it's not going to work.
Very, very, very important. And I like that you brought that up in the way of when actually going out hiring help, don't only ask about if they can solve the stuff you actually need solved, but also that you can work together.
Sure.
I learned the hard way as a European here in Denmark, a very small country. One of the first things I ask for when I'm looking to bring people on, or I have somebody come in and help me with a specific thing, is how do you take payment? Because with this being a very small country, some of the big international payment processors saw Denmark and like, this market is way too established, way too small for us to make any money. So we don't even want to enter it. And therefore, like, have had a few times where it's kind of been a pain in the ass to pay people.
Yeah.
It's either been like nearly the amount of the service in fees on top of it, and back transfer fees back and forth, that kind of stuff, or it's been a complete shit show. It's like, can you do this? Can you do this? You need to sign up to this account, then you need to transfer it, and it becomes so painful that you're like, I could have done whatever I hired you to do, my goddamn self, for free with the amount of time I have spent talking to you about this payment.
Yeah. And when you're talking about, like, especially smaller one-off services, right? Like, just go for ease on these kind of things, right? Make it easy on you. If you're building a relationship where someone's going to be doing something for you every month or every 2 weeks, okay, that effort maybe becomes kind of worth it. I mean, we've had team members in India, in Lebanon. We've got team members here in Brazil. And setting that up is different for every country, and making sure that we're doing it in a way that's fair to them, but easy for us. But for like small one-off projects, we just go to Fiverr, because I can't be bothered to figure all that out for everybody's individual stuff.
You can get PayPal. I found this is one of the best options because it's one of the cheapest to do it internationally, and most people have it or have the ability to use it.
I have beef with PayPal, though.
What's your beef with PayPal nowadays? This a conversation we shouldn't get into.
No, my beef with PayPal is quite short. During the pandemic, PayPal froze a lot of business accounts. And they froze a lot of personal accounts that were being used for business. And people who desperately needed their money couldn't access it for weeks on end. And PayPal just didn't really give a reason for that. Because, they're a money transfer service. They're not necessarily a payment processor. So, again, but it's that idea of what's your risk comfort level. If you're cool with that, if you're cool with, fingers crossed, right? Pandemic number 2 doesn't come in our lifetimes. But if it were, and PayPal were to repeat that whole process, are you cool with PayPal holding on to that money for however long they deem they're going to hold on to it for? If that's an absolute no for you, then looking for other options is a good idea. If it's little one-off projects, okay, the risk is very low. It's not a big deal, right? But that's anything in business. It has to be evaluated between how much does this make my life easier in time, money, comfort, emotions, versus what is the expense to do it in those same things.
That was a very nicely put message, and I think it's a good place to round out the episode. So for the people that really enjoyed our conversation, had some fun with it, maybe want to get a bit of actual legal advice, where can they reach out to you? What's the best channel to connect with you at?
We're quite active on Instagram, and we're actually launching an educational YouTube channel. It will probably launch right before this is released. Both of them you can find at Inline Legal, because we help you get your legal in line. You can also find us at www.inlinelegal.com.
And all those links are going to be down below, so it's nice and easy. People don't have to spell it out, because if it ain't down there for me, it ain't important enough for me to check out. That's my principle.
It's fair. I like links too. It makes my life a lot easier.
Samantha, thank you very much for coming on the Business Library today and having this conversation with me. I had an absolute blast, actually making law fun.
This was good. Yeah. I hope we can make legal, at least not so heavy. If not fun.
Good. What was it? Disgusting lawyer letters. I might have mispronounced a little bit. They're never going to be fun once they land in the inbox, I imagine.
Look, I'm telling you, we just got to add a lion to the bottom. That's all I got to do.
I'm looking forward to one of those.